Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling, well, a really famous story of conquest. But we're going at it from a different angle.
That's right. We've got sources here that look at the Israelite entry into Canaan, specifically focusing on some, let's call them strategically bizarre choices.
Bizarre is putting it mildly. We're talking actions that seem, from a purely military standpoint, completely irrational. Forget the usual siege tactics. We're digging into why they did things that look almost suicidal.
Exactly. We're zoning in on that transition. 40 years wandering, Moses is gone, Joshua's in charge, and they're right at the edge of the promised land, Canaan.
And it's not empty land. They're facing these, heavily fortified city-states. Jericho's the big one, the gateway. These places were considered almost unbeatable back then.
Right. So our focus isn't the conquest itself, not the battles per se, but three specific, let's say, non-rational acts right at the start.
Okay, what are they?
The crossing of the Jordan River when it was flooding, the mass circumcision right after crossing, and then the weird marching around Jericho.
Yeah, see? Militarily, none of that computes. Marching. Circumcision in enemy territory. Crossing a flooded river.
Makes zero sense on the surface. And that's our key today. Our sources argue you have to see these events through a specific lens.
Which is?
It's interpreted through what the text calls God's way and fulfilling contract law. The covenant, basically.
Yeah, the covenant. So this isn't just about land, it's about implementing a specific social and legal system.
Precisely. That's the hidden meaning, according to this interpretation. These seemingly absurd military moves, they're packed with spiritual and, crucially, social significance.
So our mission today is to unpack that, to see how maybe the real victory wasn't about swords and shields, but about demonstrating this radical commitment.
You got it. How these unconventional acts were actually the core strategy.
Okay, let's start where they started. The Jordan River, 40 years done, land in sight, massive river in the way. What happens?
So the command comes.
Yeah.
Cross the river, now.
Simple enough, except
Except the timing. The sources are really specific here. God commands the crossing during the spring flood season.
the flood season. You mean when the river's highest, fastest, most dangerous?
Exactly. It's the absolute worst time you'd pick if you were planning this yourself. Any sensible leader waits for summer, when it's shallow and slow.
So demanding it now, it seems almost designed to be impossible. Or, frankly, malicious if you don't know the background.
Well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? The interpretation is that this immediately sets up the core theme.
Yeah.
Human limits versus divine possibility.
Right. It's like saying your plans, your logistics, they're irrelevant here. This operates on a different level.
Precisely. It forces reliance on something beyond just human calculation. It shows that God's plan, in this view, often kicks in right where human ability ends.
Okay, so how do they manage it? This raging river, the whole nation needs to cross. What's the mechanism?
It's very specific, and it loops right back to that contract idea. The priests are told to carry the Ark of the Covenant,
The symbol of the contract itself.
the very symbol, and they have to walk into the raging water, not just to the edge, but step deeply into it.
Committing themselves and the symbol of their entire mission to the most dangerous part.
Yes, and as soon as their feet are fully in the water, the story goes, the river stops flowing upstream. It just piles up like a dam.
Creating dry ground for everyone else to walk across. It's a famous miracle, but the source adds a layer, right? A legal analogy.
It does, and it's fascinating. It compares this to general law versus special law.
Okay, break that down. General law is like physics, gravity, water flowing downhill.
Exactly. The normal rules of how the universe works. Natural law. The source calls it general law.
So the river stopping isn't just magic, it's framed differently.
It's framed as a special law being issued by the ultimate sovereign God in this context.
Like an emergency decree from a king that overrides a regular law for a specific higher purpose.
That's a great way to put it. The special law doesn't just randomly ignore the general law. It overrides it temporarily to achieve something more important.
And that something more important is...
The spirit of the contract. The whole reason they're there in the first place.
Okay, we absolutely need to define that contract then. If it's the reason for overriding natural law, what is its core purpose?
The sources are very explicit. The goal is to establish a society without gaps. That's the key phrase.
A society without gaps. What does that mean in practical terms?
It means a society fundamentally free from systemic discrimination, specifically discrimination based on social status, rank, or wealth.
Wow. So no huge divides between rich and poor, powerful and powerless.
That was the ideal, yes. A conscious effort to prevent the deep class structures and inequalities that were totally normal everywhere else in the ancient world. Think about where they came from.
Egypt. Centuries of slavery, the ultimate hierarchy.
Exactly. So this contract, this mission, was born directly out of that trauma. It was designed to be the opposite of Egypt, a radical social experiment.
So connecting that back to the Jordan, God stops the river, invokes this special law.
Precisely as they're about to step into Canaan to build this gapless society, the miracle enables the social mission. It's God clearing the way, overcoming their physical limits so they can fulfill the contract.
Let's think about the impact of this. A river damming up during flood season. Upstream must have been a disaster zone.
Oh, absolutely. Huge flooding. A massive, unnatural event. And it wasn't hidden.
Right, this wasn't done in secret. The local Canaanites must have seen it.
They would have seen the river suddenly swell even more upstream, maybe causing chaos, and then,
Yeah.
poof, a dry path appears and an entire nation starts crossing.
What would they even think? What kind of power can do that?
Terror, confusion, utter bewilderment. They'd be asking, who are these people and what kind of God do they have who can mess with the Jordan River at its peak?
So the crossing wasn't just about getting from point A to point B.
Not at all. The source frames it as a massive contract law proclamation ceremony.
A public announcement.
Yes. To everyone in Canaan, we're here. We operate under a different system. And the power behind our system just stops a flooding river. It's a declaration of arrival, backed by overwhelming, inexplicable power.
And the ark being carried through is the symbol of that new system.
It's the core message. It generated, you can imagine, intense curiosity, but mostly paralyzing fear among the existing powers. What do you do against a force like that?
That's a powerful setup, shifting from military might to ideological announcement.
And it perfectly sets up the next completely non-rational act. They've just performed this huge miracle, terrified their neighbors, and now they're camped just inside Canaan in a place called Gilgal.
Okay, standard military procedure here. You've crossed, you've scared the enemy, now you dig in, right? Build a fort, set up patrols, prepare for a counterattack.
Consolidate your gains. That's military strategy 101.
But they don't do that.
They do the exact opposite. Right there, surrounded by hostile cities fresh off this display of divine power. They choose that moment for mass vulnerability.
The circumcision at Gilgal. All the military-aged men.
Yes. Think about it. In that era, no modern medicine, no antibiotics. This procedure was seriously debilitating. It would make every single soldier unable to fight, maybe even unable to walk properly for days, maybe weeks.
So in effect, they voluntarily disarmed their entire army.
Completely. Total self-disarmament. From a purely tactical view, it's utter madness, suicidal even.
And the timing again. Why now? The text apparently notes they hadn't done this for 40 years in the wilderness. Why pick the moment of maximum danger right after entering enemy territory?
That's the interpretive key again. If the Jordan was about showing external power, Gilgal, according to the source, is about internal conviction and reliance.
Okay.
It wasn't stupidity. It's presented as a deliberate, deeply intentional act, an extreme expression of reliance, absolute trust.
And the source distinguishes this from just believing something in your head.
Very clearly. Belief can be passive.
Yeah.
Trust here is active. It's a physical action that goes against every instinct of self-preservation.
By making themselves completely helpless, militarily speaking.
They were making a statement. Our safety doesn't come from our swords or our walls. It comes from our commitment to this contract and the power that backs it. They are demonstrating total dependence.
But the risk, I mean, surely the Canaanites had scouts. They must have known the Israelite army was suddenly incapacitated. It's the perfect time to attack.
You'd think so. Logically, yes. But here's the paradox. The unexpected result described in the source.
What happened?
Instead of attacking the Canaanite kings and their people, their hearts melted. They lost their nerve, their spirit to fight.
Why? That seems counterintuitive. You see your enemy vulnerable, you strike.
But remember the context. They just saw the Jordan miracle. They already know these people are backed by some immense reality-bending power.
Okay.
Now they see these same people willingly make themselves completely vulnerable. What does that tell you? If you were just relying on normal military strength, you would never do that.
So the Canaanites looked at the suicidal act and thought, it must be a trap, or proof of something else.
Exactly the analysis in the source. They likely reasoned, no sane group takes this kind of risk unless they are absolutely 100% certain of their divine protection. This vulnerability must mean their God is so powerful they don't even need to fight.
Wow. So the weakness became a sign of overwhelming, terrifying strength.
Precisely. The strength of their God and the certainty of their commitment to that God in the contract. The act of obedience, the circumcision, paradoxically became their strongest defense. It paralyzed the enemy with fear and uncertainty.
They were probably thinking, if we attack them now, while they seem weak, what unimaginable power will strike us down?
That's the idea. The enemy's fear of the unseen protector was greater than their assessment of the seen vulnerability.
It completely flips the script on what strength means. Not physical power, but visible commitment.
Visible, risky commitment. The real deterrent wasn't their army's readiness, but their unwavering public dedication to their contract, even when it looked like suicide.
Okay, this sets us up for the big one. Jericho. Massive walls, seemingly impregnable. They've done the river crossing, the trust exercise at Gilgal. Now, how do they take the city?
Well, the instructions for the siege are, again, totally unconventional. Bizarre, even.
No siege towers, no battering rams.
Nothing like that. The orders are, priests carry the ark, blowing trumpets, and the whole nation marches around the city once a day for 6 days.
They're walking.
Just walking. And on the 7th day, they march around 7 times. The priests blow the trumpets, everyone shouts, and, well, the story says the walls fall down. But crucially, the instructions don't explain how the walls will fall. It's all about the procession, the ritual.
It sounds more like a parade than an attack. Let's break down the elements. The trumpets, usually a call to arms.
Here, the source interprets the trumpets' sound differently. It's still a proclamation, a declaration, but using a message, not a weapon.
Signaling intent, but an ideological one, not just military.
Exactly. Like saying, pay attention, something significant, something based on our system is happening.
And the ark, front and center again.
Constantly reiterating. This whole thing, our presence, this strange marching, whatever happens next, it's all about fulfilling the contract law. That's the purpose.
And the marching itself, just walking around the city.
It clearly defines the action as not a standard siege. Sieges involved immense physical effort, digging trenches, building ramps, trying to break through. This was performance, ritual display.
But here's where the source apparently drops some really shocking details that give this whole thing a different meaning. What was the visual strategy?
2 key details that are militarily insane but make sense if you see it as communication. First, they march close to the walls.
How close?
Within arrow range, easily within range of defenders on the wall.
Okay, that's risky. What's the second detail?
They wore plain clothes and carried no weapons.
Wait, they marched within bowshot of a fortified enemy city day after day, dressed like civilians, completely unarmed.
That's what the sources emphasize.
That's an open invitation to be massacred. It makes absolutely no military sense whatsoever.
None, unless the goal wasn't military assault. The interpretation is that this was essentially a show-and-tell strategy, a visual demonstration. The source even calls it showing evangelism.
Showing evangelism, like a visual sermon aimed at the people inside? But what were they trying to show? Who was the audience?
This is maybe the most profound part of the interpretation.
Yeah.
The target audience wasn't just the king or the soldiers on the walls, who were probably already scared after the Jordan event.
Okay.
The primary audience, arguably, was the ordinary people inside Jericho. The laborers, the lower classes, maybe even slaves. The ones watching this slow, bizarre parade every day for a week.
And what message were they getting from seeing unarmed people in plain clothes walking around outside?
They were getting a live visual demonstration of the gapless society in action.
Back to the contract law. How would they see that?
Think about life inside Jericho or any ancient city-state. It was rigidly hierarchical, status was everything, and it was instantly visible.
How so?
Clothing, mainly. The rich and powerful wore fine linens, expensive dyes, jewelry. Commoners wore rough, undyed stuff. Slaves wore rags or specific markers. You knew someone's place instantly.
Okay, so the people on the walls see the Israelites marching.
And everyone's dressed similarly. Plain clothes, no obvious signs of a wealthy elite decked out in finery while others are in rags. The visual markers of status that define their world were missing.
It looked like a unified people, not a hierarchy.
Exactly. First visual shock. Where's the obvious class division?
What else? What about leadership? Inside Jericho, the king and commanders would be obvious armor, horses, guards.
Right. Elevated, separate, projecting power and authority through dominance. But what do they see outside? The priests with the ark walked among the people. The leaders, like Joshua, weren't depicted as standing apart, surrounded by elite guards. They were part of the procession.
Implying a different kind of leadership, not based on force or status, but on shared purpose.
That's the implication. An order based on the contract. not on a typical rule or ruled structure. It would look fundamentally different from anything they knew.
And maybe even subtle things. They marched for hours. Did they, like, take breaks, eat lunch?
That's a key point the source raises through interpretation. If the people on the walls observed them resting, sharing food, what would they see?
In Jericho, the rich would eat well, the poor would get scraps, especially during a siege.
Precisely. Consumption disparity was huge. If they saw the Israelites sharing resources relatively equally, maybe everyone getting similar rations.
It would be another massive visual contrast. Look, they don't seem to have starving poor alongside feasting lords.
It demonstrates visually the economic aspect of the gapless society. Relative equality, not hoarding by the few.
So put yourself on that wall. You're maybe a laborer, maybe someone treated badly by the city bosses. You live under constant inequality, and for a week you see this other society marching outside.
A society that looks unified, egalitarian, where leaders walk with people, where resources seem shared, and they're backed by this terrifying power that stopped the river.
Wouldn't just be fear, it would be maybe curiosity, hope, a profound culture shock.
A massive cultural and social shock, far more destabilizing potentially than siege engines. It plants a seed. Is another way of life actually possible?
It could cause massive internal unrest, doubt about their own system, their own leaders.
Exactly. They're being shown a living, breathing alternative to the oppressive city-state model they inhabit. The marching, the clothes, the lack of weapons. It wasn't military folly, it was psychological warfare aimed at the city's social foundations.
So the real attack wasn't on the stone walls, but on the walls in people's minds. The assumptions about how society has to be structured.
That's the core argument the Israelites are broadcasting. The gapless society, the one promised by our contract, the one you've maybe been told is impossible. We're living it, right here, now.
And that visual message, seen day after day, was what truly undermined Jericho before the walls physically came down.
It created an internal crisis. Maybe it eroded the will to fight, especially among those who had the least to gain from the current system. The physical collapse was just the culmination.
So this apparent military absurdity, marching unarmed within arrow range, becomes an act of supreme confidence.
Confidence in the power of their message. Their social structure, their contract, was their weapon and their defense in that moment. The goal was to capture the imagination, maybe even the loyalty, of those inside by showing a better way.
To break the spirit of the city, rooted in its inequalities, before breaking the stone.
Precisely. Confronting them not just with power, but with a radically different, potentially liberating social possibility. That's far more revolutionary than just another army at the gates.
Okay, let's pull this together. This deep dive has taken these famous, almost mythic events and reframed them entirely.
Yeah, we looked beyond the surface story. The Jordan crossing wasn't just getting wet, it was a contract proclamation on a massive scale.
The Gilgal circumcision wasn't just a ritual pause, it was this extreme demonstration of absolute trust through vulnerability.
And the Jericho March wasn't a failed siege. It was a sophisticated visual demonstration of the contract community, aimed right at the hearts and minds of the people inside.
And the thread connecting all these seemingly non-rational acts?
The contract law. The driving purpose to establish that just, gapless society. According to this interpretation, divine power intervened because they're so visibly and riskily committed to enacting this radical social mission.
So, to really get it, you can't just look at the military angle or the miracle angle in isolation.
No, you need all of it. The theology, the specific social injustices of the ancient Near East they were reacting against, and the psychological impact on the Israelites themselves and on the Canaanites watching. Success wasn't just faith, it was faith demonstrated through radical social practice.
Which brings us to the final thought for you, the listener. If these ancient, seemingly non-rational actions were really about demonstrating a radical vision of society without those deep gaps of inequality and status, what does that say to us now?
Yeah, in our world today, with our own kinds of information overload, polarization, and, let's be honest, deep societal gaps, what can we learn from a strategy that relied on showing, not just telling?
And think about that person on the wall one last time, watching this impossible society walk by. The stone walls were strong, sure, but maybe the walls inside their own minds, the conditioning that says, this is just how things are, inequality is inevitable. Maybe those walls started to crumble first.
Did the internal fortifications fall before the external ones? A question worth pondering.
Definitely something to think about. Until next time, keep digging deeper.